Morning, welcome back to Open Med School. I am Dr. Andrews, Professor of Medicine and Principal Pegadas Institute of Medical Sciences. Today I will be discussing a very important topic, that is the lower motor neuron and what are the clinical effects of a lower motor neuron lesion. As we know, the nervous system, the motor system is arranged in a hierarchical order. You can see here there is a nerve which is supplying the muscle. The cell body is situated in the anterior horn, and this is the final common pathway that supplies the muscle, and this is called a lower motor neuron. So where are the lower motor neurons situated? One, it is in the anterior horn. Second is the equivalent neurons in the brainstem from where the cranial nerves are arising. So the cranial nerve motor nuclei and the anterior horn cells forms the lower motor neuron. This lower motor neuron is under influence from the cortex. So you can see here is a pathway that is coming down from the cortex to the spinal cord and influencing this lower motor neuron. So they are the corticospinal tract, an example of an upper motor neuron. There are other pathways arising in the brainstem, for example, the reticulospinal pathway, vestibulospinal pathway, tectospinal pathway, etc. They are also descending down and influencing the lower motor neuron. So, lower motor neuron is the final common pathway, and the pathways descending down and influencing the lower motor neuron are the upper motor neurons. Hope this point is clear to you. So, now we take little more details of the lower motor neuron. So the lower motor neuron situated in the anterior horn, passing via the anterior root, then the peripheral nerves, and then finally it reaches the muscle. It supplies various muscle fibers. Any lesion of the lower motor neuron produces what is called the lower motor neuron paralysis or lower motor neuron problems. We'll go back to upper motor neuron once more. This is the lower motor neuron supplying the final common pathway and is being influenced by pathways arising from the cortex, the corticospinal pathway. From the brainstem, various pathways are also there, about which we'll discuss in the next session on upper motor neuron. Okay. Again, you should see that the muscle contains two types of fibers. One is the contractile element, we call as the extrafusal fibers, and in the muscle there are fibers which are concerned with the proprioception. They are called the muscle spindles. In the muscle spindles there is the being supplied by a neuron called gamma motor neuron, and the skeletal muscle proper is supplied by the alpha motor neuron. So the gamma motor neurons are supplying the motor part of for the contraction of the muscle spindle. The gamma motor neuron is there, and from this muscle spindle proprioceptive impulses are passing. It is going via the peripheral nerve, reaches the spinal cord via the posterior root, and they are also influencing the anterior horn cell. For the proper maintenance of the tension or the tone of the muscle, this is needed. So these are muscle spindle. We will be discussing in another session on reflexes. So because the importance is these lower motor neurons are important for maintenance of the muscle tone, that is a point to be kept in mind. So this is the anterior horn cell. As already mentioned, there are descending tracts. Some of them directly influence, some act on an interneuron. From the interneuron, it influences the anterior horn. Some of the descending pathways are facilitatory. So some are facilitatory, and some are inhibitory. So that is another point to be kept in mind. That is, the descending pathways or upper motor neurons can be either facilitatory or inhibitory. Again, remember the anterior horn cell is influenced by the afferents coming from the muscle spindles. Okay. Now the concept of motor unit. You can see there is a single anterior horn and the nerve is supplying. So this is the anterior root, this is the posterior root, this is the posterior root ganglia, then comes a peripheral nerve, there may be plexuses may be there, and then it reaches as a peripheral nerve to and supply the muscle. All this constitute a motor unit. So what are the components of motor unit? There is an anterior horn cell, there can be nerve, root is there, the spinal nerve is there, plexus is there, peripheral nerve is there, and again the neuromuscular junction and muscle fiber. The disorders of this leads on to dysfunction of the motor unit, and the findings are similar to that of a lower motor neuron lesion. So let us think once again, what is meant by lower motor neuron lesion? This refers to any disorder producing loss of function of the lower motor neuron supply to the somatic muscle. So let us look into the clinical features. Neurons give some trophic factors to the muscles, which is required for the maintenance of the bulk of the muscle. So in a lower motor neuron lesion, or when the nerve is damaged, the bulk is decreased. So the muscle gets what is called wasted. Then I already mentioned that the tone is maintained by the muscle spindles. When the nerve is damaged, you will get a decrease in the tone. The lower motor neuron impulses produces muscle contraction. So if it is affected, the power is lost. Then already we have mentioned, whenever there is a lower motor neuron lesion, we can get a loss of reflexes, or you can get a hyporeflexia. When the anterior horn or the nerve is affected anywhere, the muscle fibers supplied by the nerve can go into spontaneous contraction. That is called fasciculation. So what is a fasciculation? Fasciculation is the contraction of the motor unit. That is a single anterior horn cell, and the muscle fibers supplied by it goes into contraction. That is fasciculation. You might have experienced some twitches somewhere in body. That is fasciculation. And this is visible, and fasciculation usually will not produce movement of a joint. Individual muscle fibers, you can see that there are so many muscle fibers in the muscle. These muscle fibers may also go into contraction. That is called fibrillation. So what is the difference between fasciculation and fibrillation? Fasciculation is a contraction of the motor unit. Fibrillation is a contraction of the individual muscle fiber. Fasciculation is visible to the naked eye. Fibrillation is only by electromyography. These are the differences. So this is the main clinical features. We will see some of the clinical features. Here we can see that the muscles are extremely wasted. So this is an example of a LMN lesion. So wasting because of the loss of trophic factors. Again here you can see there is an extensive wasting. So again it constitutes a LMN problem. Another condition is the poliomyelitis. This is the disorder of the anterior horn cell that leads on to patchy involvement of the or loss of the function of the anterior horn cell, leading on to wasting and weakness in different parts of the body. So anterior horn cell disease can produce LMN problem. Suppose a nerve is cut off. Here is an example of a facial nerve paralysis. The whole half of one side of the face, you can see the patient is unable to close the eyes. The frontal belly of occipital frontalis is not functioning, so the wrinkling is absent. Face has deviated to one side, so the upper half and lower half of the face is affected, and this is an example of a lower motor type of facial paralysis. Here the patient is asked to say "ah." You can see this side is moving well and the left side is not contracting. So this is a 10th nerve paralysis or a palatal palsy, another example of a LMN lesion. So here you can see the wasting of the thenar eminence, that is due to involvement in the median nerve. Another common problem is a ulnar nerve paralysis producing what is called claw hand. What is claw hand? There is a hyperextension at the metacarpophalangeal and flexion of the interphalangeal joints. Can be ulnar claw, or sometimes we can get a what is called a median claw, where you get what is called a benediction hand. Now coming to the peripheral nerves, there is all the nerves are myelinated, the myelin is required for the fast conduction, and if the myelin is damaged, it is called demyelination. That can lead on to extensive bilateral weakness, including respiratory paralysis. So here you can see a patient on ventilator. So demyelinating illness, it is called a Guillain-Barré syndrome. So far we have discussed about the lower motor neuron lesion, what are the components of the lower motor neuron, and the problems can occur at the level of the anterior horn cell, root, spinal nerve, plexuses. Hope this point is clear, and we have studied the major clinical features. That is, most important thing, remember, the tone is decreased in LMN lesion, there is wasting of the muscles, you can get fasciculations, and there will be weakness. The difference between the weakness of UMN and LMN we will discuss later, and this point to be kept in mind, the plantar reflex, that is not extensor or Babinski. The extensor plantar is called Babinski sign, and you will not get a Babinski sign in LMN lesion. So these are the cardinal points of LMN lesion. Once you learn the LMN, it is very easy to remember or study the UMN lesion. Hope this video was useful to you.